Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. It is Wednesday, April 16th. The transfer portal is open. We knew that this would be coming, but the official arrival of Nico Iamaleava's name in the transfer portal did happen. It popped up with a do not contact tag. We'll get into that in just a little bit more, but let's start with something just a little bit fun. Just we're sitting around and we got to just ask, because Brad at 8:50 a.m. asked us, do we think Nico's on a new team by Monday morning? Over, under Monday morning. Do we think Nico's got a landing spot?
You better.
I think no.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's an argument to be made that you don't want to wait, because you'd kind of like to get in and start getting ready for the season. But at the same time, financially, based on reporting we've heard now, there's the do not contact list. So it's possible he's already got his destination figured out. But it's also possible that they just don't want 1,000 schools reaching out, that they would like to conduct their own negotiations. But if you wait a little longer and you see what shakes out with like quarterbacks to other schools possibly entering the portal, maybe more, possibilities for you open up because of that. Maybe you find some wiggle room to get in yourself. So I would say no, but I won't be surprised at all if he is.
I have no idea. I hope he is, for his sake, because I can imagine what he's going through emotionally right now, like wondering what's going on. The no contact thing, I think, I texted you guys, like, what does this mean? Because typically that would mean you have a place that's ready to go. But this has been handled atypically from the get-go, right? So maybe
Since
this
high
is
school.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, I don't know where he's going to be. The reports out there are pretty alarming, but it's like, who do you believe? Because I just saw he did a family source with Front Office Sports told them that they haven't steered him in the wrong direction. Like, he's in good shape, which is hard to believe when you have other sites reporting that Tulane's backed out, UNC's backed out, schools are waiting until it drops below $1 million. If you see group of 5 programs backing out, that gets to be pretty alarming. But nothing will surprise me. Absolutely nothing. If he's signed by Monday, wouldn't shock me. If he's still, available on Monday and we still are guessing, wouldn't surprise me. Can I ask you guys something?
Of course.
And I know I am not the first one that said this. I've seen a bunch of people say this. What do you think is the best situation for Tennessee? And what do you think is the best situation for Nico? A resolution.
Oh, you think they're back?
I was trying to think of like replacements.
No, because I think like you are going to have to break in a new quarterback. If you're Nico, the options are looking bleak. You're going to have to go learn a new system that may not compete for conference championships. Is there any way
I don't
that
think
you would go back if you're Nico and you've seen how if it's going as bad as people think? Now, he might have the place, but if it's going that bad, Don't you look at this and say, man, and you go back and you have to grovel, like you have to, and you probably have to address the team, apologize. But then if you're Tennessee, do you take them back? And the only reason I say they would, what is their best chance to still compete?
I don't think you can if you're Tennessee.
Yeah, that's if you're Tennessee.
I think you reach the point when you let him go. That was the point of no return. You can't go back on that because that sends a pretty bad message through the locker.
What if he comes back for $1 million and it's cheaper?
So then he's still making $1 million, and there's a lot of players in that locker room who aren't making $1 million.
Agreed, but the players. So I do think Nico is liked by his teammates and liked by his coaches.
I have no idea.
I do think, and I also think Josh Heupel ran the decision by the team leadership, whatever it was. Like, and I think they said, see ya. He bailed on us. We'll bail on him. But I do wonder if there was a road to reconciliation, because I think that is the best possible outcome for everybody. Even though I think it's highly, highly unlikely, I would worry about the fans' reaction to him returning. I would worry about some of the backlash if he struggles. But if you were just looking at this, like, this was a program that was kind of like unknown but exciting. Like, man, they made it to playoffs last year. Nico could take a big step forward. They're trying to maintain this competitive nature in the SEC. And for Nico, for him, all of a sudden, I'm looking at my career completely derailed. Like, if your end game is the NFL, you'd want to go back somewhere you're familiar with the system and have pretty decent weapons around you.
I do not see it being. There's so many negative side effects of it, and you touched on some of them. If he comes back, unless he plays great, like, then the fans will welcome him. If he comes back and he plays poorly, the fans will turn on him so quickly, and it just becomes a toxic environment for everybody. And then the other aspect of this is, I think if this was the first time this had happened, they might consider it. But I think the reason this happened is because, based on the reporting you've heard, this was not the first. Or not, I wouldn't call it reporting, but based on word you've heard, this was not the first time Nico's people approached them trying to redo his deal. Like, he was doing it before the playoff. He was doing it's. I think this was you know what? We're just sick and tired of it. Maybe we like you, Nico, but we are sick and tired of dealing with everything around you, Nico. So we're gonna move on.
Again, I think a lot of this is probably less than 1% chance it happens, but stipulation number one for me, if I'm Josh Heupel, I know you love your dad, but you got to be done with him as far as how it becomes to his advising, and how do you trust somebody that apparently did threaten to sit out a bowl, like a playoff game? But if he was contrite and was really remorseful, and because we've talked about this as an inflection point for college football and what it means. And, how this is, I'm sure other coaches are cheering, saying good for them for not, caving in. I think this is an inflection point for Nico, for him individually. And that's what I was like, man, if I'm him, this could go one direction or another. And I have no idea of the relationship between him and his dad and if he wanted to go that hard line. But I was thinking about what's best for everybody would be that. But I think it's less than 1% chance it would go.
When Josh Heupel said, I believe this was the exact quote, "No one is bigger than the T," right? I mean, that's you're gone. That's like you're making a statement. And to your point about the coaches, there is an army of coaches that are maybe explicitly texting Josh like, "Hell yeah," just
yes, guarantee you.
Oh God,
yeah,
Josh is like a hero right now.
Right, exactly. And so you can't, he's probably thinking in his head, we were going to go 8-4, 9-3 with them. We'll go 6-6, 7-5 without them. Like it's not going to be worth the headache, no matter what it is.
You know who needs to learn from this? Every athletic director and administration and school that gets played by head coaches. Because coaches do this all the time. Now, not the same way. It's more professional, but how many times do we see schools get played for raises at other schools? And it's like, well, we got to pay him. We have to pay him more. We have to give him a pay raise or else he's going to go to Texas or LSU or wherever it is. Not one school has taken the road that Heupel took and said, good for you. Good luck. We'll find a way. And I really wish they would have, because I think that would have prevented the spiral of, this out of control spiral of coaching salaries, which are astronomical, because no one was willing to do that. And yet we've got people cheering on somebody doing it to a player. I wish a school would take this approach as well, but there's jobs on the line. But Heupel's job's on the line with this decision. Like, if they're awful next year, I think he gets a pass because all that's unfolded. But it wasn't an easy decision to make, I promise.
What is best for Nico?
Finding a place where he can play quarterback. And I would suggest, again, not a shot on what they do, but I would suggest for your future, because maybe we should start prioritizing our future earnings instead of what we can earn in the next 3 months. Find an offense in which they can develop you for the NFL, because Tennessee's offense does not do that. And I think Nico, talent-wise, skill-wise, has the ability to be a good quarterback in the pros. But there's a lot that he needs to work on. And I don't think the way Tennessee runs his offense is the kind of offense that helps you work on the issues he has, because it really is just a first read's got to be there kind of offense.
We mentioned,
but I totally agree, but start looking at the opportunities where a school that fits that profile that also doesn't have a quarterback or money committed to quarterbacks, plural. And that's where you're like, what was he thinking?
I suggested it up.
The only place that I still go back to, and it's been quiet, and I haven't heard a hard no from it, is USC. And it just keeps coming back to me that it's in California because I think UCLA can't afford him. I do think USC could, and Lincoln Riley's had several first-round quarterbacks. Like, that's the one school that I'm wondering if they're sitting on this thing. And I also go back to when Caleb Williams followed Lincoln Riley. Do you remember how they kind of played it up? Like, he visited Wisconsin, he took all these visits, and it was done way before the port. Like, it was done. But they made it look like, oh, it's going to play out. That's the only school, no intel, just a hunch, that I still would be like, oh, that makes some sense. And I do think that number could be close to what he's looking for because they can afford it.
Are you saying that Caleb Williams was never going to go to Wisconsin? That bastion of quarterback play where Russell Wilson went to? He was always destined for USC with Lincoln Riley. What have they ever done at quarterback?
But he knew his uncle coached there. Or his friend? Who was it that coached
Bobby
there?
Ingram.
Bobby
Ingram. He was boys with Bobby Ingram.
Yeah, I have heard some people say USC is not interested. I have not heard a word out of UCLA saying they aren't interested. But I say that with the caveat of you rarely hear any word out of UCLA about football because it's not exactly the program where a lot of people are sniffing around trying to figure out what's going on.
Thankfully we do have Matt Zenitz, who is sniffing around all of these things for the latest on what's going on. Based on continued conversations with sources this week, this is Zenitz's reporting as of this morning, there hasn't been much traction to this point with the Bruins and Iamaleava. Some teams at the group of 5 level are even monitoring the situation and or reaching out to Iamaleava's camp because of a belief on their end that he might have to end up settling.
What did I say on Monday?
Got
shot down by Bud, the coward who didn't want to show up today because he knew I was right. If you want to start, again, I don't know if they will, but you want to start thinking long-term potential instead of short-term, maybe a year at a G5 where you can ball out and really increase your rate going into one more season is the route to go.
Do you think that, because that, I still think again, anything is on the table. But if you're saying less money, that still could be at a Power 4 school.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be G5. The discount could be anywhere. But see, what I think is interesting, what if he goes somewhere where he has to compete for a job? Sure, we'll give you $1 million, but we have a starter who's already been there and we're paying him $1 million too. Good luck. Does he want that? Because it sure seems like that's not the path he would take.
I don't know. I mean, this is where, again, I'm trying to make sure that I'm separating Nico from his camp and representation. Do not contact because my father will be in touch with you. Right. This is being run in a different way. I said, I think he would not be on a team by Monday because slow playing seems to be part of the negotiating tactics here from his camp, including we're going to try to drag this out right up until the spring game, right up until the portal opens, try to do a little holdout by not going to a practice. And then, oh no, now you got dropped. What was the hope? You don't go to practice and then all of a sudden the deal gets done and you run out there for the spring game. Well, it didn't break that way. I think they're sitting around and what's happening is the slow play process is having more power conference schools with money to burn backing out, which is then getting everybody's ears perked up about when the sale's coming, right? This is when a group of 5 school, or this is when a power conference school that doesn't have the same kind of spending power is going to start getting excited. Maybe they're hoping, maybe Nico's camp is hoping that the time will lead to the kind of dominoes that you're talking about, where we don't know who's going to leave from somewhere else and whether that's going to put a power conference school with spending power in a desperation position. But I mean, guys, I remember getting in the portal has to happen in the window. You don't have to commit.
Right. Yep. He can wait. He can wait as long as he wants.
Wait for an injury.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a June announcement or something bananas, and it would not surprise me.
I think he's got to start learning a system, but it wouldn't surprise me. To your point, what if somebody gets hurt?
Things have been so horribly managed to this point that it wouldn't surprise me to make another terrible decision and wait until the summer too. But I just stop worrying about money now. Worry about the next. I mean, this isn't. I don't know. Maybe he hates football and he doesn't want to play after college, so they're trying to maximize it now. I don't know, but it's just not a good decision when you have the potential he has for the future earnings in the NFL to sit and quibble over a few $100,000 right now. Do you know how much guaranteed money quarterbacks get in the NFL? Just use your head.
That was my next question. Is he draftable right now? Not obviously for April, but what if he doesn't play?
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yes.
If he was in this draft class, he'd probably be like the 4th best quarterback. Like he would be ahead of Tyler Shuck. He could compete with Jackson Dart. And if they saw him work out next to each other and test, he might get taken above him as the 3rd quarterback overall. Like he's got potential.
Could he not play college football this fall and be drafted in next April?
Yes, not in a spot where it would be
financially
makes sense. Yeah, but yes.
You know where I just saw the future flash before my eyes because I have the perfect destination for him. That would make so much sense. And wouldn't it be hilarious? And I think it could be a fit for him if he wants to get to the NFL. Do you guys know who led the nation in passing last year?
Kyle McCord.
After he was left Ohio State,
right?
Goes to Syracuse. Who's one of the hotter names, like flying under the radar in the NFL draft? It's Kyle McCord. Who does Syracuse play week 1?
Tennessee.
Oh my gosh, make it happen. Football gods, let's go.
I will say
big booster too. Like I think there was a little bit of issue with the school, like that he backed out of the basketball. He was a big basketball booster. He was the one that flew in like Tom Brady, all these celebrities that sit with him at basketball games.
I will say
Iron Eagle.
I will say that Trevor Pena, they losing a lot.
Receiver.
Yeah, he just left. So now we're dealing with Now we're dealing with a total reboot of that Syracuse offense. No LaQuint Allen, no Aronde Gadsden, no Kyle McCord, no Trevor Pena. I think one other wide receiver who is like close to 1,000 yards receiving as well, also out the door. So it's a hard reset. And Syracuse doesn't get the benefit that those SEC schools do, where your 2024 schedule is just your 2025 schedule with swapped locations. That Syracuse is about to go from having the easiest ACC conference draw to one of the more difficult ones. So, Nico, I don't know if I'd do that. Though I will say this. At least it's climate controlled. We did talk about how uncomfortable that young man looked in Columbus in December. At least he'd be dealing with a climate controlled situation. Okay. Let's
Diego State, but that's a similar offensive situation as Tennessee.
You don't think that based on his tools, you don't think a productive year, even at the G5, would be beneficial?
Oh, no, I think a productive year to G5 would be very beneficial.
Not developmental, but a productive year.
You could find one that's developmental too. Yeah, I would find a new offense. I think that would be one of my priorities because, like, you hear a knock on a lot of quarterbacks coming out of college is they can only, read one side of the field. Well, Tennessee literally only asks their quarterback to read one side of the field on every single snap. So I think you need to find an offense that could allow you to develop. But I think looking at a G5 possibility, if it exists, would make a lot of sense because, as we just talked about, going to the NFL right now is not financially feasible. You need to rehab your image somewhere and show people something. So if you play well enough at a G5, he might be able to enter the NFL draft next year.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like you've got the G5 and bounce back up to the power conference level. There might be a go G5. There might be, back to Danny's very early thing. What's best for Tennessee? I think move on. Healthier for your just overall culture. What's best for Nico? Maybe just go somewhere and play ball out enough, be productive enough that you're going to be able to be in the 2026 NFL draft rather than try to go for another year in college.